You mentioned doing a society debit card and having societies have access to that sort of banking. Have you investigated how possible that is, how much it might cost, and how feasible it would be?
Well, certainly at the minute, the turnover for EUSA as an organisation is £9 million, yearly. So certainly our finance department has the capability to be dealing with these sort of transactions we're ordering, bar and food sort of all the time, and there's all the staffing costs and stuff. So the EUSA banking certainly has a capability to deal with bringing the EUSA banking for societies up to a much more modern system.
Your emergency taxi scheme, have you contacted any local tax firms to see if they'd be interested? Is that something that you've done a little bit of investigation on, whether the university would be up for it?
Yeah. Well, again, certainly this is a policy that is, again, using systems that we already have in place. So EUSA does have a agreement with Central Taxis to do with the transport of staff home. So at the end of the festival in 2:30 in the morning or something, then the staff do not have to pay for that taxi. That is charged to EUSA, and that's done through Central Taxis. So again, using these systems that we've already got in place, I'm going to bring in this emergency taxi scheme so that students can get a taxi whenever they need to without paying up front, and they can charge that at a later date.
You criticise current EUSA officers for having personal agendas. Which officers specifically do you think have personal agendas, and what specifically have they done to make you think that?
Well, I mean, obviously that's in relation to the Princess Anne motion. I wasn't very happy with that going through, and I think there's been a lot of talk about that on campus, and that's something that I disagreed with and voted against in the meeting. So yeah, that's what that means. Again, it came up last night, which was the Remembrance Service Sunday. I would have gone to that, but yeah, it's. I think the role is representative, and so whilst I understand what he said, I personally would have gone, and I think that was an error not to go.
Do you think there's been a lack of transparency in EUSA this year, and if so, what would you do to improve it? The very fact that there was an interdict brought out against a student newspaper is extremely worrying. But the presence of that interdict means that I don't know the full facts of what's going on. I think there is a lot that we're not being told as students, and because I don't know the facts, I can't say whether that is stemming from sabbatical officers or from staff, and I'm not going to make any speculation over that. I think had everyone been open from the start this year, we wouldn't have seen anywhere near as much kicking off as we have done. So you haven't really been involved in EUSA before. Do you think that gives you an advantage or a disadvantage if you were elected in dealing with the sort of bureaucracy of it?
Well, I certainly see it as a positive thing. I've never been elected in a EUSA position before, but I have been engaged and on the outskirts. I've been to all the referendums while I've been at university. I was in the Keep the Library Open sit-in, things like that. And also I've been a student here for 5 years, so I do have a lot of experience of being at university and what needs to be fixed and all that kind of thing. So no, I don't think it puts me at a disadvantage at all.
You talk about expanding zero tolerance. Do you think zero tolerance works in our unions, or do you think there's things that we need to fix about it?
At the moment, I don't think zero tolerance works in our unions, really, very much at all. I think it's fantastic that the EUSA has signed up and that the will is there. But I went to the Big Cheese last weekend, stood outside, asked a lot of people if they knew what the zero tolerance stood for on their wristbands. None of them did. So if my policy isn't just expanding it, it's also raising awareness so that everyone understands what it means, what unacceptable behaviour is, and then expanding it across the university.
CCTV is very expensive,
yes.
And some people dispute its effectiveness in reducing assault and things like that. Why have you chosen to focus on that?
Well, I'm aware that some people have concerns about CCTV in terms of government and privacy, and I certainly share those concerns, but this is about a safer campus. At the moment, actually quite a lot of the CCTV that you can see around on campus either isn't connected or isn't recording, so actually there needs to be quite a lot increase. The uni has 719 active buildings and 61 roving security staff, which goes down to about 2 to 5 at night. They're only human, they can't get around everywhere. It's also not just about assault, I've also put better lighting in there. I think everyone has a bit on their campus where they don't want to walk through because it's dark and a bit scary. So that's about better lighting, but it's also about theft. There's a huge problem with theft at this university, especially in the art school recently. And if you have CCTV, someone steals something, but then you can just find out who they are and the police can go and catch them. So it's not just about sexual assault, although certainly I think it would be a deterrent. I know personally of cases where people have been sexually assaulted, and the main reason that they've managed to be one of the very small minority who secure a conviction is because there was CCTV footage. So I think it's important.
There are some posters over there about voting in the elections. What specifically do you want to do differently from what's already been done?
Well, my poster campaign isn't actually just about the elections. It'd be at the start of each year to introduce the SABs, let people know more about EUSA, let them know about their representation, and obviously if I was elected, I'd have my Meet the Rep event, so also putting them out, just letting people know more about what EUSA does, how they can get involved and what it can do for them. And one of my posters, as I'm sure you've seen, says a more transparent EUSA. I think the main issue is a lot of people just don't understand what EUSA does, and they're not engaged, and they don't see any reason to get engaged. One of the things I'd want to do is work from all the campuses so that people can see what I'm doing, and to have regular VPSA drop-ins, and again with the Meet the Reps, getting people know what they do. But I'd also have a blog or a weekly update, maybe in the Student or the Journal, where people can see what meetings I've had, where I've been, what I'm talking to, and the progress I'm making on my manifesto.
So I have this one free gym day policy. I haven't gone into a cost-benefit analysis for it, but I just feel like it does make sense, seeing as like the majority of student gyms up and down the country in different universities are free for all students every day of the week. So like Leeds gym is free, my cousin's at LSE, that's free, I have a friend at Exeter, that's free every day. And so I'm not sure how much it would cost to have one free day per week, but it can't be much. The way I propose to tackle block booking is to introduce a prioritisation system. So there are societies that have specific space needs, but then a lot of societies I'm in just literally need a room, a place to meet, a place to have chats and discussions. So I think making a prioritised system is how the block booking system should work. This is backed by lots of society presidents and also maths students who have kindly come up with like a nice algorithm for me to whip out if anyone asks me, but I don't have it on me right now.
How will you go about achieving this with these free buses to all satellite campuses?
I think it depends on the campus. So if it turns out that that is like the best way to do it, so if you're going to the Royal Infirmary, then I think that is a shuttle bus that already runs sometimes, but not students can't always get on it. It's sometimes for patients or staff. That seems to make sense as a shuttle bus. But medics also have to go on expensive trips to like study placements. So a lot of people go to Livingston. There would make no sense having a shuttle bus between those two, so that would just be subsidised travel, or like full paid for travel, not just subsidised. I think this year EUSA has had like a really bad problem with transparency, but from what I can see, that's like come as an effect of the new constitution. People seem to be trying to battle charity law, employment law, like see how they work out together. I would do as much as I legally could to let students know what was going on. I would write a fortnightly blog. I would hold, that would detail what I had and hadn't been able to do. I'd also be honest about any failures I'd had. I'd like hold open meetings. I'd make sure I was visible on every campus. I'd answer all my emails. And I would just make like the meetings more open and accessible than they currently are.
Some of your opponents have promised things like increased CCTV, increased lighting, self-defence classes. You've not really touched on any of those policies. What do you think about that whole debate about how we sort of keep students safer on campus and those particular policy suggestions?
I think those particular policy suggestions are actually more of like a victim blaming background than I come from. So that suggests that anyone who does experience any harassment or trigger warning like sexual assault, I think it suggests that if there had been like more lighting or if they'd walked home like a different route where people could have seen them, then it wouldn't have happened. Suggesting you have self-defense classes. I mean, you shouldn't have to be like battling off perpetrators. What we need is actually like more community education to let people know that this isn't okay. In my extended manifesto, I've got, it's sort of a rough idea, but it's like a liberation road show. So going into different schools in the areas and teaching them about liberation issues, so particularly like women's rights and why sexual assault is not okay.
So you say that you're the candidate best placed to represent the views of all students. What is it makes you think that you're the best candidate for that and that other candidates aren't as good?
Okay, so I'm the better candidate to represent all students because I'm not exclusively part of that clique. I've been part of youth societies and society council on campus, so I know how the politics of it works. But then I'm also just that ordinary student. I don't have like a huge faction of political, alignment behind me to sort of have to bow to. So I'm me, and I'm representing those students. The Feel Safe campaign may seem expensive, but can you put a price on how safe people feel on campus? I mean, the lighting in George Square, how long has that been out for? And nobody's really said very much. And, you know, they might seem like election, gimmicks, but they're what affects real people. And, whilst we have a relatively safe campus, people want to feel safe as well.
Do you think that EUSA has a problem with transparency at the moment, and what would you do to fix this?
It's got a huge problem with transparency. The fact that we had the EGM just the other night is ridiculous. The issue started back in the summer, and it's only just come to pass now. Accountability is a key part of my election campaign. I want to be open to all students to come and criticise me. So I'd have open sessions where you can just come and ask me what I've been doing, why, and what I've not been doing, and why. And you can question me why this is happening or why it's not. Because elections are only 2 weeks, and some issues come up then, and then for the next year you're in that post. And to be honest, students don't really have that much accountability over the SABs. That's why I want to increase that and be that accountable SAB. I mean, this is our Students' Association. It's not just 4 SABs and a few others. These need to be opened up, and we need to have everybody engaging from all campuses across EUSA and across the university. So in response to the criticism about being able, it's not a physical reference, it's the fact that I can do a job, I can do the job, and I can represent students. And that's not whether or not you are or aren't disabled. And as VPSA, it's representing all students, not just a select few.